a program by, for, and about women today with Sandra Elkin.
Good evening and welcome to Woman. Tonight we're going to discuss engineered food and other goodies. With me is Beatrice Trum Hunter, author of Food Additives and Federal Policy, The Mirage of Safety. Her earlier book, Consumer Beware, Your Food and What's Been Done to It, resulted in many people changing their eating and shopping habits. Beatrice, welcome back.
It's lovely to be here.
It's nice to have you back again. What's new and delicious on the food scene?
The engineered food.
Oh, no.
These are the foods that have been taken apart, literally, and put back together in another form, something that we don't even recognize.
Like what? I'm almost afraid to ask.
Like an 18-inch egg, never laid by the chicken in that form. The yolk is poured into a device and cooked, and then the white is poured into the device and cooked until an 18-inch sausage-like shape comes out with flat ends. And this has a long shelf life of about 6 weeks, and it can be sliced in restaurants and other feeding institutions so that it's portion control. Every slice is exactly the same as every other, and there are no rounded ends.
What is the nutritional value of this marvelous egg?
We don't know because nobody bothers to test what happens when these foods are taken apart and put back together and restructured. But probably it's less than the original farm fresh shell egg.
What about the consumer? I mean, is this something the consumer said, I have to have?
I doubt it. I don't think that any consumer has ever thought up such an idea. But it's a convenience food, and it probably will be available in supermarkets at some point. Right now it's being used, though, in restaurants.
I can't imagine what you would ask for in the supermarket. Could I have a long egg, please?
That's what they probably are called.
Yeah. It sounds awful. I mean,
yes.
The egg is one of our best natural foods,
Surely.
and it just sounds terrible to do that to it.
Well, there are other things, too, in these restructured foods. Some of the very poor quality meats, for example, of beef with a lot of gristle and fat, and ham, is taken apart, it's flaked, and then it's reconstituted to look like a steak. And to add to the deception, there is a branding device which brands the grill marks so that they're not actually grilled steaks, but they appear to be grilled.
Now, why?
Well, it's just an inexpensive use of materials, and then it's probably sold at a higher price.
Are we going to be able to tell when we order a steak in a restaurant?
No, because there's nothing on the menu that specifies that this is reconstituted steak. There are some states that are now interested in passing legislation in truth on menu labeling, but as yet there's very little that's been done.
Would it be a good idea if you go into a restaurant and order a steak to ask?
Yes, it would. I don't know that the people in the kitchen even know because these things are done elsewhere and delivered. But as you know by now, when I order a sliced chicken sandwich or sliced turkey sandwich, I really do ask before because otherwise I'm apt to get the chicken loaf or the turkey loaf,
right,
which is also reconstituted.
What are some others?
Well, some of the bits of shrimp may be reconstituted to appear like the butterfly shrimp. They make them up into great big pieces of shrimp in shrimp shape. And pork can be reconstituted to look like pork chops. They're generally called choplets.
Oh. Is this going to be a continuing trend? I mean, is it going to get worse before it gets better?
Yes, I think so, because the restructuring it just seems to be one of these technological delights. There's some thought, for example, of layering food, different types of food to be put in different layers, something like plywood. And this is going to be in the future. Or things.
Give me an example.
Well, at various forms, perhaps a layer of cheese, a layer of ham, and perhaps a layer of something else. And these would all be layered together and put together in such a form that they will hold together, and then sliced. Things such as toothpaste tubes, but with 2 holes in the tube, and one will pour out something like peanut butter and the other one like jelly, so that you can put these 2 on the bread at the same time. A great convenience.
I'm shocked, I really am. Do you hear people say food just doesn't taste the same as it used to anymore?
Oh, yes. Many people, for example, who think that the food was much more tasty when they were living in Europe, say that when they go back to Europe that it really still does taste better because it's freshly prepared and it's grown in a different way. It isn't just nostalgia.
And it really seems not to be much hope for it, you know, doing a turnaround and going back. Or should we want it to go back?
Well, I think we have to go forward, but we also have to take some of the good things from the past and not discard them. We can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Certainly lots of people have gone back to growing their own vegetables because they know that the freshly grown vegetables taste so good. And they do go out of their way to get farm fresh eggs if they are anywhere in the area of the
short, not
countryside.
long.
Oh, the short ones, yes, yes. And people who remember the way chickens tasted if they were free range. I think that there are many people who are interested in getting tasty food, good quality food. And there are many people who still like to make their own bread because they know that freshly made bread with good ingredients does really taste much better.
And really the health food market is growing.
Yes.
And it's growing very fast.
It's true. And all of these things are taking place at the very same time that the highly convenience foods are also proliferating. And these fabricated foods are coming on the market.
Are there things that one should watch for in the health food market? Are there rip-offs? Can you get fooled?
I think that one has to be cautious wherever one shops and read labels and ask questions. In health food stores, for example, the very perishable things should be refrigerated. Things such as wheat germ. If you see it on an open shelf in the air, it's not going to be very fresh. And the term cold pressed for the vegetable oils is very meaningless, and many people will pay a higher price without knowing that there really is no such thing as cold pressed. And I think one of the rip-offs, and the storekeepers don't always realize this either, jellies and jams in the health food store may be labeled strawberry jam with honey. Well, you'd think that there's no sugar in that, wouldn't you? But this is not necessarily true. Jellies and jams are standardized food, which means that they don't have to have the ingredients on the label, but they may have a great deal of sugar in them. So that if it says with honey, it may be an eyedropper full of honey with a bathtub full of sugar in the proportions of that jelly or jam.
So you really do have to shop with some care then?
Yes, you do. And some of the health food stores are beginning to get some things like the puffed rice and the television dinners, these mixed dinners where you put them all in one pot. And if you read the ingredients, they have some artificial color and flavor in them. So one does have to be careful.
Last time you were here, we talked a lot about food additives.
Yes.
And I'm sure there have been some new developments. Can you fill us in?
Oh, yes. In the meantime, some more of the food additives have been banned, and others have been proposed for banning. Red number 2 was finally banned. This is the dye that has been used in so many foods and also
I think
beverages.
that was just after we spoke last time.
Oh, was it?
I think so.
And more recently, FD&C red number 4, which is in maraschino cherries and also in drugs, has been proposed for a ban.
Which drugs, Beatrice? You know?
Not all of them. They're only drugs that can be used up to a period of 6 weeks can have FD&C red number 4. Now, at least 11 years ago, the FDA wanted to ban this dye. It's an azo dye, and they wanted to ban it because there was a lot of evidence that it was hazardous even at that time. It produced cortex problems with dogs, and more recently it's been found to produce bladder polyps, urinary bladder polyps, so that now the
in
FDA,
dogs or people?
In dogs. But this is a great warning sign, and so now the FDA again is proposing the ban. The reason it wasn't banned 11 years ago was that the maraschino cherry producers pressured, and the FDA said, well, how many maraschino cherries do people eat? It would be perfectly all right to use it because it's used sparingly. But this is not true. There are many people who have several Manhattans with maraschino cherries, and of course they're used in the canned fruit cups, the cocktails, fruit cocktails. So a lot of people may be
Is it in
ingesting
licorice,
quite a few.
or is that another?
No, that's another one. This is another dye which the FDA has proposed banning, and that is a charcoal black, which is in licorice and jelly beans and mascara and eyeliners and things like this. And this has offered a problem because the method of making this color, the black, is the incomplete combustion of gas, and the byproducts are known to be cancer-inducing.
Well, I think that's very impressive about mascara. I think a lot of women will be interested to hear
Yes. Some of the cosmetic people, I understand, have turned to other dyes, ferrous oxide, which is from iron. Now, whether this is any less hazardous is another problem. But again, the FDA has known of the hazard of this carbon black for a number of years.
that. Is there something new on cyclamates?
The cyclamate manufacturers had petitioned for cyclamate to be reintroduced in the market, and FDA has denied this petition because a whole new set of problems have come up. Not only the cancer-inducing properties, which are not really very clear-cut, but a number of other damaging effects which have been uncovered since the original research. So it's still in limbo. It can neither be proved safe nor unsafe, and this is true, you see, for many of these things.
Are there other colors that are being investigated?
Yes, the FDA has proposed a great analysis now of a number of colors. I think there are about 10 others. Almost all of the coal tar dyes that are being used have a
So they
very
would be
poor
mainly
history.
found in cosmetics?
Also in food and in
food?
drugs, yes. And they all have a poor history of lack of safety. There's a great deal of evidence. You see, these dyes have never been given permanent clearance because it has been a situation where there were many, many problems. So they've only been given provisional clearance. And they were supposed to, that is, the manufacturers were supposed to give proof of the safety. They've never been able to give the proof. It was actually on that basis that red number 2 was banned finally.
Is there as much cause when an irritating agent is found in a cosmetic as in a food? I mean, would you...
Well, it depends
as
on the
concerned?
usage. Of course, cosmetics can be dispensed with, but foods cannot. You have to eat foods if you want to
Right.
survive. So it's not a question of either or, but I think that the main emphasis really is with the foods and beverages.
Do you think the public attitude has changed? When you first started talking about this in your earlier books, are you getting a different reception than
Absolutely.
you are?
Years ago, a lot of people would say to me, oh, well, if something was not safe, the government would not allow it. Nobody's saying that anymore.
There seems to be a lack of trust.
A lack of trust and much more skepticism, what I would call wholesome skepticism. And people are beginning to realize that they themselves have to take action for their own health to protect themselves, that the government is not doing it.
Would you have
It cannot.
do you know something good that's happening, or, you know, someplace where people are rebelling?
Yes, indeed. I think that many parents are becoming interested in what's happening in the school situation in regard to the school lunches and the school breakfasts and the vending machines and what these vending machines contain with food. And all through the country now there are great moves afoot to either ban the vending machines or to at least get better food in them. And many of the parents are also looking into the food that is being served. I don't know if you're aware of the fact that, for example, in the breakfast program in some areas of the country, the only thing that's being served to the children is a fortified donut or a fortified Twinkie or a Pop-Tart and a glass of milk. And this is considered a good breakfast instead of the traditional food.
Well, who regulates those programs, and who has put a stamp of approval on that kind of thing?
The stamp of approval has been given by the federal agency, the USDA, but it's also in cooperation with the state and also the local places. Now, some schools have rejected this type of breakfast, have found that they still want the traditional breakfast, but a lot of the schools are satisfied with it because these things are pre-plated and they are shipped in, and there's no
Right.
problem of cleanup as well as preparation, so that there isn't any labor involved. But what it's doing for the children is to give them the notion that a very sugary confection type product passes for good nutrition.
Are there problems with the school lunch programs also?
Yes, this too. The type A lunch, when it's been analyzed for the nutrient content, has often been found faulty and below standard. And there are parents who are quite concerned about this. A group in Greenburgh, New York, for example, has done an outstanding job in trying to upgrade the nutrients in both the school lunch program and the vending machines. They've gotten rid of all of the junk food in the vending machines, and they are now having unsweetened fruit juices instead. They've gotten rid of the junk food in the snacks which was served, and they are using carrot strips and celery strips, and they're putting extra cheese in the pizzas served the children so that they're getting enough protein. And the group of women were particularly clever, I think, in going to the Board of Education to be empowered as a committee. And they met with the vending companies that sell the products to the school. And they finally found out that some of the snack food being sold contained artificial colors and flavors. And they got in touch with one of the companies, the Drake Company especially, and they said, look here, we have some hyperkinetic children and we don't want them to be having artificial colors and flavors. You have an artificial color in one of your cupcakes. We would like you to do something about it and to reformulate so that our children could eat these cakes without any artificial color.
Did it work?
The astonishing thing is that the Drake people went to their food technologists and they attempted to reformulate. They tried to use turmeric, which is from a plant substance, a yellow coloring, and to use this instead of tartrazine, which is the coal tar dye. Well, I think that this is astonishing that one of the large food companies was sensitive and receptive to the whole idea of reformulating. So this was a good beginning step.
That would probably act as a pilot program for other parents around the country who are concerned and would like to do something.
Yes, and I think
model.
perhaps also mark quite a pilot step for food processors who show some responsibility in trying to reformulate when these problems do arise with
Because
people.
the reaction of the Drake Company is not the norm for the industry,
No.
is it?
No, because some of the other companies contacted did not show the least bit of interest. All they tried to do was to tell the women, oh, well, don't worry, your pretty little heads, you know, these things are really quite safe because the government says that they are.
Where does the individual consumer stand legally? I know you're not a lawyer, and perhaps this is an unfair question, but what rights do we really have?
In terms of what?
In terms of going to a large corporation and saying, look, we are a group of people, or I'm an individual, and I would, you know, like you to consider changing this.
Well, I think that if more people did it, more things would occur. It's probably something that a lot of people have never considered doing. I'm constantly telling people to write letters to the manufacturers. Ask what goes into the foods if you don't have proper labeling. Also write letters not only of inquiry, but also letters telling them why you will not buy their products. And I also tell them to write letters commending certain manufacturers if they try to put out a product which has no artificial color or flavor, or no antioxidants, no preservatives. They should be commended.
I want to just throw some food at you.
Oh, please.
I want you to just tell me what's happening with these various foods, because these I got from letters that people wrote after you were on last time, and people who are sort of around here. Lots of the women are concerned about yogurt. Do we know what we're getting when we buy yogurt?
No, we don't, for the simple reason is that yogurt is not a standardized item as yet, so that a lot of things can go into the yogurt. Well, some of the things, for example, powdered milk can be used to make the yogurt a little bit thicker, or gelatin, or carrageenan, or other vegetable gums. I think one of the really offensive things that's put in the yogurt is the jelly or the jam, because this has a great deal of sugar. If they would just leave the plain yogurt plain and leave it alone instead of gussying it up, and they modify this perfectly good plain food and they make it into something quite different in flavor and texture.
What about decaffeinated coffee? We've been hearing a lot about that lately.
Well, for years I've been telling people that the solvent that was used in decaffeinated coffee was not a good one, the trichloroethylene. And of course, I have found that in the last year, this is now in the news as a possible carcinogenic agent, cancer-inducing, so that the decaffeinated coffee no longer contains that solvent. The only thing is that the new solvent that's being used, methyl methylene chloride is under the same cloud. It's also suspected. It's used in dry cleaning.
Last time you were here, you made some very strong statements about margarine. Do you still feel the same?
More so.
More so?
Yes. There's a lot of evidence showing that when these fats and oils are changed into a hardened form through the process of hydrogenation, they undergo molecular changes. The essential fatty acids are changed into a completely different form, and it's very questionable whether the body can utilize them. And there have been studies by Dr. Comereau and his associates with swine, and the margarines are much more damaging in these experiments than are either the hardened, that is saturated fats from animal sources such as butterfat or lard. Margarine comes out much worse.
We talked a lot last time and a little bit so far this time about dyes, but what about waxes on vegetables and things?
This is another thing that should be avoided. The waxes are put on things such as cucumbers and rutabaga turnips, and even on things where you cannot even get them off, because at least you could peel the rutabagas or the cucumbers. But if it's put on things like strawberries, you cannot get the wax off, and yet it is practiced on many foods such as this. Green peppers sometimes have wax on. It's to keep the food from drying out and to have a longer shelf life. But the paraffin is not in our interest in terms of eating it.
Is it your opinion then that we should peel cucumbers and not eat skins? And
unfortunately, you have to if it's waxed. If you have it from your own garden, you don't have to.
Also, someone asked me to ask you about copper and zinc.
Well, copper and zinc have ratios, and they're antagonistic to one another. And as the new foods are proliferating, there's a great deal more copper in them and much less zinc, especially as food is refined. So people like Dr. Carl Pfeiffer, who works with schizophrenics, finds that many of the schizophrenic patients have a very high level of copper, and if it's very high, it's poisonous, and very low levels of zinc. Now, many of these new foods consist of the textured vegetable protein from soybeans, and soybeans happen to have very low amounts of zinc. So Dr. Pfeiffer feels that as time goes on and we're getting more and more of this textured vegetable soybean in our fabricated foods, people are going to be shorter and shorter with the zinc.
What about baby food? At one time there was rather a scandal concerning baby food. Has anything changed with that?
Well, one of the leading baby food manufacturers put out some statements which seemed to scare mothers very much against making their own baby foods. The statement seemed to indicate that they were doing a disservice to the baby because they were creating many hazardous conditions. And this was roundly denounced by people like Dr. Jean Mayer and others, because this is certainly not true if the mother takes a great deal of care in handling the foods properly and in using clean utensils, and that's really all that it takes. So that the baby foods can be made very simply at home. They're cheaper. You can control the ingredients. You can leave out the salt and the sugar and the modified starch, which go into the commercial ones, and you can have very good foods.
One of the things that you told me when we talked before the program is that you're very upset about what's happening with infant formulas in third world countries. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Many of the third world countries where women have traditionally breastfed their babies, and rightly so, are now being convinced by detail women sent over from the infant formula feeding companies. And these women are dressed in white uniforms, which to these people in the third world countries represents the nurse, the person with the information.
But they are not in fact nurses.
They are not. They are simply detail women. And they can try to convince these people that they should switch to the infant feeding formulas, which they cannot afford. And since it's so costly for them, what they do is to dilute the formulas. Instead of a supply lasting for 3 days, which might be a normal amount, they stretch them out with a lot of water so that they last for about 2 weeks. It still looks milky looking to them. The water is often contaminated, and they have no way of sterilizing the bottles. And so these infants are actually malnourished as a result of using these stretched out infant formulas. I feel that it's morally a very terrible thing that has been happening.
Is anyone doing anything about that?
Yes, some of the church groups have become very much organized to combat this, and I think that there are many other people who are becoming concerned about it as the public becomes aware of the problem. Because these women certainly should be breastfeeding. There is no comparison between breast milk and formula milk to begin with. The formula milk can only attempt to come somewhere near, to approximate, but it's in no way equal to mother's milk. What might interest you is some recent information that's come out that the mother's milk actually changes in formulation over a period of months to meet the needs of the growing child. There are these very subtle balances about which we really know very little. And the mother's milk in many ways gives the feeling of bonding, psychological bonding between the mother and the child. It also offers a great deal of protection against infectious diseases. And it has many subtle effects about which we know very little.
That's going to be heartening news to the mothers who are making that choice and are trying to hold out against
Yes.
pressure to feed a baby food.
Yes.
Beatrice, a lot of people claim that they don't have time to bother with all of this. A lot of women claim that they're too busy, they work, and so on. What is your response to
That's
that?
really a myth. And my favorite story is about the woman who told me that she could not possibly cook from scratch as I told her that she should. And you know what the reason was? She said, "I'm much too busy. Every day of the week I'm taking my child to the doctor, the dentist, and the allergist." Isn't that lovely?
On that note, thank you very much. Come back again.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you for watching, and good night.
This program was produced by WNED-TV, which is solely responsible for its content. Major funding was provided by public television stations. Additional support was provided by unrestricted general program grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Ford Foundation.